Hi, welcome to day one of our 5-day intuitive eating series. I'm really excited to be doing this. I know I get a lot of questions about intuitive eating, and I know a lot of people are kind of hearing about it more. It's kind of a little bit more mainstream, and so I'm just excited to share some of the principles about it and some things that I see with my clients and some of the benefits and how it might help you and give you a few kind of tips or pointers for starting your own intuitive eating journey. So just to introduce myself really quick, in case you don't know me, I'm Nicole and I'm a registered dietitian. And I'm also a mom to 3 kiddos. I have 2 boys and a girl, 7, 4, and 2 years old now. And I have an office in Agora Hills in Southern California. And I've had a private practice for, I don't even know, like about 8 or 9 years now, I think. And I primarily work with people with eating disorders and disordered eating of any kind, and just people that are tired of dieting and want to heal their relationship with food. And then I also am working a lot more with families and doing more coaching around helping create a healthier relationship with food for our children. So more kind of intuitive eating coaching for parents, and also just intuitive eating coaching, not just in raising kids, but for ourselves. So anyways, that is a little bit about me. I'm happy to answer any more questions as well. I have a few notes, so I'm probably gonna check them here and there. But anyways, so I wanted to get started with day one, which is we're going to be covering the first principle, which is reject the diet mentality. And this is great because anyone can start working on it pretty much at any time. And it's also just kind of ongoing work through the whole thing. Some of the principles are not necessarily appropriate right away, but this one is. Like, for anybody at any time, you can start working on rejecting the diet mentality. So basically it's a mindset shift, right? And it's ongoing work that you're going to keep doing. And the diet mentality is basically that we need rules. We need like prescriptions for how to eat. We need to be told what we should and shouldn't eat, or how much or when, that we need this basic diet prescription. And it tells us that we can't trust ourselves with food, that we have to listen to these outside rules instead of listening to what our bodies might want, to ignore our own internal signals. So the real principle right here is getting clear with yourself that diets actually don't work. Like, they're not healthy, they don't work, they're not helpful. So and in fact, they're probably damaging, right? We actually know that they're pretty damaging. So there's 4 steps that are outlined in the intuitive eating book, and I'm going to go through each of those because I think they are actually important and really helpful. So the first thing that we talk about is to recognize and acknowledge that dieting is damaging, right? The damage that dieting causes. So we know that it doesn't work for weight loss. We have research that supports that over 95% of people regain that weight within like 5 years, and that the majority of people who lose weight regain back even more weight than they lost. So you can see how that if people continue to go on and off diets, their weights just naturally continue to trend up, because they lose the weight, then they gain back even more. Then they lose again and gain back even more. So it's just this slow, steady progression over time to end up in a higher weight than they ever even started at. So that's, one piece of it, right, is the weight regain. And I'm going to say that this is true even for things you might be thinking like, well, I don't diet. I don't really go on diets, and maybe not, but it's true for all prescriptive ways of eating, even including some of the very currently popular ones, where people are doing like different detoxes and programs. And I'm not trying to like shun anyone for, wanting to make money or do a business, or who really believes in that. But I hear it over and over from my clients and from friends of my own that go on these. They do the same thing. They end up losing some weight while they're doing it. They say they feel so great, all of these things. And then the minute they stop or something happens, they regain the weight. So it's not just your standard kind of diet, it's all of these things that people are selling and doing in programs and everything, where people end up regaining the weight and feeling bad about themselves, to be honest. So the problem is, though, right, that since these diets do quote unquote work in the short term for weight loss or for feeling better or whatever it is, people keep going back to them. And so it's this yo-yo dieting. And yo-yo dieting in and of itself, regain or weight cycling, yo-yo dieting, it's all kind of, I'm lumping that together, causes damage in and of itself. So we know that this weight cycling, losing and regaining, also is linked to other health conditions. So people might experience other health risks like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, cardiovascular disease, more inflammation, just general inflammation, and higher mortality rates. And so a lot of the things that we even blame on being in a larger body for could be linked to the weight cycling, not just because somebody's in and of itself, like their body's bigger, but because they've actually done so much weight cycling that has contributed to a lot of health risks. Not to mention that being on diets also leads to binge eating and having really strong cravings for food. So you can see that it's damaging in and of itself, right? So rejecting the diet mentality in this first principle is about really recognizing that diets just don't work. And I think that can be really hard because they do work in the short term, like we were just saying, right? And they're wrapped up in this like nice shiny package. Here you go, here's this diet. You feel in control when you're doing it. You get praise, like it feels really good. And so we get sucked back into thinking that they do work. So we have to get clear with ourselves in this principle that diets actually don't work. And when we hear our friends talking about diets and it sounds like really alluring and like we want to go back to it, to keep going back to, they actually don't work. We have research that supports that. And if this has been you, you probably have your own stories to support it. So instead of thinking like, oh, I just have to keep going back and I have to find like the next right diet or the thing that's finally going to work for me, I think we have to, go back to, it actually hasn't worked. I have all this evidence that it's not really working for me, and really start to trust and believe that, right? Like how we always talk about the, definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over. And whether or not it's a different diet, it's still a prescriptive way of eating. And we're finding that it just doesn't work. So you need to stop doing it and really recognize that. So let's see, where do we want to go to? Okay, so that's one thing, right? Is first of all, recognizing the damage that they cause and that they don't work. The second thing is be aware of diet mentality traits and thinking. So sometimes we don't even realize that it's like a diet mentality type of thing that we're doing, right? It could just be these like subtle shoulds. I should eat this or I shouldn't eat that, or we feel a little bit guilty for it, or we overeat and we say like we're so bad, or the constant one I hear, right, is like, I'm being good today, or I'm being bad today, so I shouldn't do that. Or yeah, like what else? I'm trying to think. But just all of these subtle little things that actually are part of dieting. So it's like going back to, right, these ideas that we need to be in control of our food. We need to listen to reasons or follow, certain ways of eating. But the truth is, right, that it's not about that. It's about getting in touch with our own internal signals and listening to our own cues. We don't need all of these prescriptive ways. Okay, so I want you to just start kind of noticing what that thinking is that you might say whenever you hear like a should, a shouldn't, a good, a bad, anything like that. I want you to label that as part of your own diet mentality thinking. I shouldn't eat because it's too late, or I shouldn't eat this because I didn't exercise today. Any of those things are the diet mentality. So let's start throwing out all the shoulds and shouldn'ts and check in with like what we actually feel like and what we actually want to have. Okay. The third thing is to get rid of dieting tools. And dieting tools could be things that are actual like tools, like a scale or measuring cups or something. I'm not saying that you have to throw away all your measuring cups, but to not use them to say portion all of your food, right? Like, oh, I have to measure out the 3/4 cup of cereal because that's what it says on the box, or the half a cup of cottage cheese. So to get rid of using those things, to get rid of your own scale or put it away. I can't tell you how many scales I have in my office because people bring them in because sometimes these things are just hard to part with. They're hard to get rid of in the moment. So I'm happy to be like, I will keep that safe for you right here so that it's not tempting. You don't want to step on it when you see it at home, because that's damaging for your own relationship with food if you're constantly beating yourself up over your weight, right? But sometimes people just aren't ready to totally get rid of it. Other people like smash their scales or just completely throw them in the trash, whatever works for you. But I would really think about not weighing yourself at all. And if that sounds like absolutely terrifying, you might do a couple things. Like one might be that you reduce the amount. So if you're weighing yourself every day, then you go to every other day or once a week or whatever feels manageable for you. Or if it's really problematic, it might mean that you need to get some support with that. So sometimes too, I have a client that I don't necessarily want or need to weigh, but they want me to, just so they know that somebody's keeping an eye on it. You know, it like feels safer to know that somebody else is doing that. And so you may consider seeing a dietitian or some other health professional that could do that for you, just so that it feels more contained if you're not quite ready to take that step. Okay, so dieting tools might be things like actual scales and stuff, but they also might be ways that you just keep yourself feeling really safe, like buying low calorie foods or reduced fat, or anytime there's a lower calorie option, you always have to order it or buy it. Apps, like, right, using like MyFitnessPal or other tracking devices, anything like that, those are considered dieting tools. And so we want to get rid of those, or at least reduce the amount, hopefully getting rid of them. Okay, so even if you can't do something permanently right now, maybe you just choose like one thing that you're going to work on and just reduce it. Or like we said, if it's not permanent, just put it aside so that you're not constantly being faced with it. And I think what can feel really kind of scary about this is that we're used to diets being like, this is exactly what you do. So it feels really safe and contained. In fact, I often have a lot of my clients say that to me, like, I don't feel like I'm doing anything. So it feels kind of scary to feel like, I don't know, I'm used to like eating these certain, portions or at certain times of day, or like an exact plan, or cutting out certain foods. Like, so I'm allowed to eat all of these foods. So it's like all of these things that I feel like I'm really doing something. So then when you start trying to like work on intuitive eating, it's like, what am I doing? Right? It feels really, really kind of scary and just uncontained and maybe even out of control in some ways. So one thing about intuitive eating is that you can actually go through it in a way that can feel like that's your containment. So maybe it's just choosing, like what we were talking about, like one thing that you're going to work on, and that's the thing that you're doing right now, right? Like reducing the amount that you're weighing yourself, or not measuring a certain food. So something like that. But if it feels like you're really flailing a lot, again, you might want to get some help in containment to have somebody kind of support you in that. And the intuitive eating workbook, I should say, is also awesome because, again, it feels like you're doing something. Like you can work on these actionable steps and write things down or do an exercise. So that can be really helpful too. But I just want you to know that, like, it's supposed to feel that way a little bit because diets always have felt really contained. So it's going to feel completely different and uncomfortable. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. It's just what it is right now, So kind of just knowing that ahead of time can help too, so that you can trust that a little bit, just to be aware, like, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. It's supposed to feel a little bit different, potentially a little bit out of control. And that doesn't mean that anything's wrong. It's just part of the process right now. Okay, so lastly, be compassionate towards yourself, right? Like this all takes time. This way of thinking is totally different. You're going to hear a lot of people with the complete opposite way of thinking about things, right? Or feeling like you should jump on the diet that they're doing because they're doing something and you're not. So just knowing like you need to be compassionate with yourself. It takes time. My clients often tell me to like, they always start with, I know I'm not supposed to feel this way, or I know I'm not supposed to want to lose weight, or I know I'm not supposed to think like this, but, right? And that's absolutely not true. Like those are things that we need to talk about. I expect you to be wanting to focus on losing weight or something, because that's what we're so conditioned to think about. So it's not a should or a shouldn't even there. It's just, that's what part of the process is, and so be compassionate with yourself as you have different thoughts come up, as you want to jump back on that diet or other plan or eliminate something. Like that's part of it. But I want you to continue kind of recognizing these thoughts around it and trying to shift them. Okay, so I want to go over even a couple of examples of how you start to kind of gently shift some of your thoughts. So like one thing is the diet mentality might say to you, or we can call it like your dieting voice, your disordered eating voice, your eating disorder, wherever you kind of fall on that spectrum or what you relate to, or some people will even name this voice for themselves. So just for the sake of this to be general, I'm going to say like the diet mentality, but you can think of what resonates with you. But like the diet mentality might say like, I shouldn't eat this food because it has too many calories. Okay, so that's what the diet mentality is telling you. Like, don't do that. You shouldn't eat that. There's too many calories in it. But the non-diet mentality then, so you can counter it. So I want you to think about how can I talk back to that voice and say something that's healthier? And that might be like, I trust that my body will utilize however many calories this food has in it. And when it's done processing and digesting it, it will tell me when I'm hungry again, and then I can eat more. Okay, so it's starting to shift into a place of more trust. The diet mentality might say something different, like it almost sounds positive in a way, like I deserve to eat what I want today because I exercised. And so the non-diet mentality way of thinking, though, would be like, I deserve what I want. I deserve to eat what I want to eat every day, not just because I exercise. And I trust that my body will tell me the type of food that it needs and how much energy it needs, whether I exercise or not. And just because I didn't exercise doesn't mean that I don't need energy, because my body needs energy just to keep my heart beating, my lungs functioning, and to allow my brain to think. Okay, so we're shifting to a much more compassionate, kind way of speaking to ourselves about all of this. Okay, so there we are. While I'm kind of wrapping up, if you have any questions or anything, feel free to type them in. I'm happy to answer, or in the comments, we can continue to chat about this if there are questions that come up too, if you're not live right now. But I want to give you a couple of like actionable steps that you can start right now. Okay, so I want you to work to reduce or eliminate those diet tools. So I want you to think of one thing that you're doing that would be considered like a diet tool, or a way that you're trying to control your food in some form. Okay, so that might be, I'm going to stop measuring the peanut butter, or I'm going to start measuring the cereal, whatever it is. So you're going to stop doing that. Or I'm going to smash my scale, or I'm going to put it away. Or I'm going to stop buying or looking at magazines or articles that promise weight loss or tell me like what the stars are eating to lose weight, or whatever that might be. Maybe you get rid of all of your really diet-like cookbooks, all the light ones or the, elimination type ones, that sort of thing. So think of one thing that you can do today that's going to be moving towards the non-diet mentality instead of the diet mentality. And then decide, write down one statement that would be a diet mentality statement that potentially, like ideally, you hear yourself saying a lot, and work to reframe that. Okay, you can do this in a journal too. Like you could write down a ton of stuff and then practice responding to it. Because if you do that, when you're in the moment thinking it, it's more likely to come more naturally. So just practice shifting that mindset and talking back to that disordered eating diet mentality type of voice. Okay, so there's 2 things that you can take away today to start working on right now. Okay, and then like I said before, this is the work that I do. So if you need some more support, feel free to reach out. I offer a free 15-minute call. We can chat about whether or not we would be a good fit to work together. You can email me and I can give you more information. Or if you just have a couple questions, I'm happy to answer them. So feel free to email me or set up a free 15-minute call so we can go over them, because what I find a lot of times is that this is that kind of accountability work, right? Like, okay, I get it. I know that diets don't work. I'm in it. And then like my friend over here starts doing this and she's losing weight and it sounds so good. And so we kind of like toy with that idea again, and maybe we even try it out a little bit, or we question if we should. Or of course, when you start doing this work, it seems like everybody around you is like on a diet and losing weight and doing the thing that works. And so that's what I find, like my clients have to come in and we have to go over this again and again, like every week, right? The same sense of like, actually, you've done this before and it hasn't worked for you in the past. And so we're trying something different. And you know that, right? So we have to like keep going over and over and over these things because they just don't work. So anyways, day one, reject the diet mentality, right? So you're going to think of a way to shift your thinking, and also one actionable thing that you can do today, whether it's putting away your scale or throwing out some old like diet magazines or something. All right. I hope you join me tomorrow for day 2. I'm looking forward to connecting with you then. All right. And if you have anything, please post it in the comments so that we can support, answer questions, all of that stuff. All right. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.